Feeling guilty is one of the feelings that I think most of us are very familiar with. And lately, it's creeping up on social media and in newsletters that I get from artists about feeling guilty about creating, about having fun, about having joy, about doing things that are normal while the world is in so much suffering and in wars and destruction is going on, and so they don't create anymore. And while I can really understand the motivation behind this, it's built on a false premise. And today we're going to talk about that. Hi, I'm Monika Astara, and I created this channel recently as a permission to play channel. We explore real-life stories from my 39 years of having worked with thousands of people, and it's ongoing, and combine it with radically simple art making so that we can make a U-turn from this wacky world right now and come home to ourselves, our awe, our joy, and our natural calm that's inside of us. And today we're going to explore why the world needs our joy, needs our creativity, not despite the sufferings that's going on, but because of the suffering that's going on. In this video, I'm going to give like 3 examples on how joy in adverse situations is essential for making it through it. One is stories of growing up in post-World War II Germany and what people were telling me at that time. The other one is when I was in Israel and I talked to survivors of the concentration camps. And the third one brings it back into current time, into an everyday situation that we all can totally relate to. So stick with me and let's explore the feeling of guilt and what we can do about this. So when I grew up in post-World War II Germany, one of the things that struck me a lot was that adults really didn't talk about the horrors of the war that they had just survived. It was almost like there was a refusal to go there, and all the energy was focused on going forward. But sometimes when I asked my parents or other people, what they would talk about was the things that brought them joy during those times. And I remember really well, you know, how my mother used to talk about how they would turn on the radio and sing the songs that were played on the radio. And she kept that alive, like every Saturday when we did our chores, when we cleaned the dishes and then baked the cakes and cleaned the floors and so on. The radio was on and we would sing along whatever was playing on the radio. And the other one that I remember is my father never talked about it. He was like severely wounded from the war, and twice he talked to me a little bit about when I asked him, what is the one thing that you remember most? And he said, I'm not going to talk about the bad stuff. He said, but this is something that always stuck with him. And he said, when they were lying in the trenches on the border or between France and Germany, he said the trenches were dug on each side, one side Germans, one side French people. And he said, so during the day they were shooting at each other, and at night they were lying in the trenches, and they would have campfires, and on each side they would be singing songs. And because that area was often part German, part French, part German, part French, a lot of the French people in that area spoke German. So he said, for 1 or 2 hours at night, they would feel like humans. They would sing songs together, the French on their side and the Germans on their side, and sometimes they would sing together. And he said the ugly thing was, in the morning they had to get up and shoot at each other. But for those 1 to 2 hours at night, it made them feel like they were human. And so the joy they had from singing was not a denial of the war and the ugly stuff that was going on, but it was what kept their spirit alive, what kept their humanity alive. And the other part is when I was 19, it was 25 years after the war ended, I went to Israel. And growing up in Germany, you know, like after the war, it was like you grew up with an eternal guilt about what your country did during the war in the concentration camps. And so when I went to Israel as a 19-year-old, I went with that load of guilt on my shoulders. And what happened with people in Israel had lived in Germany and that were in the concentration camps for 5 years totally blew my mind. It was amazing when they heard that I was German, or they came running up to me and going like, "You're a redhead, you must be German." They would come with their arms extended, and I'm so happy, you know, like, to have a German. Will you sit down with me? Will you have a coffee with me? Will you sit in my shop with me so that I can talk with you? People invited me into their homes, and they never told me stories about horror. They were so happy that they could talk to a German about the things that made them survive the camps. And what they told me was stories about guards who risked their lives to smuggle in food for them that they had saved from their strict rationings and brought them in for the children and for the women to have a little bit more strength. They were telling me about the guards who smuggled in papers and pens or pencils so that the children could draw, that the adults could write letters. They talked about how guards would risk their lives standing guard outside of their bunkhouses while they were singing on the inside. They were telling me stories about that, and how there were guards that would warn them when the bad guards came around and they would stop singing. So they were telling me how much and how often guards risked their lives to help them. And so also, they were not denying any of the horrors, but they were talking about the human spirit, the kindness, the things that made them survive the horrors of what they were going through. And they were so happy that they had somebody that they could tell that to. So in none of those circumstances, people were in denial, but they did not let darkness win. And what they needed was a joy of creativity, the joy of song, the joy of writing. So if those historical things are too far back for you and too far removed, let's bring it into the present time. Imagine this, because almost everybody can relate to this. You're lying in bed. You have very high fever. Your body aches like heck. You can barely talk. And then somebody comes, sits on your bed and goes, "Oh my God, you poor thing, you must be suffering so badly. Oh my gosh, I'm just going to sit here and suffer with you. How would that make you feel? Suffocating, right? So, let's imagine the other scenario. Somebody comes in, brings you a bowl of soup that they made for you, sits on your bed and says, oh my God, let me tell you this story that just happened on the way over. You're going to get such a kick out of it. How would that make you feel? Isn't it like you all of a sudden got a shot of energy that you could absorb, and that vitality gave you the strength to heal, to help heal you. It didn't take away from you. It didn't suffocate you. It gave you. And that's exactly what the world needs right now. And that brings me to the last question. If your child broke a leg, would you break a leg in solidarity? It's absurd, right? Of course you wouldn't. Your child needs you standing. Your child needs you whole. And that's exactly what the world needs right now from you, from all of us. The world doesn't need our suffering to be added to the pile. The world needs our joy. The world needs our creativity. So, if you've been waiting for permission to draw, to doodle, to play, to sing, to write, to do things that bring you joy, this is your permission slip. Not despite of the world being in suffering, but because of it. The world really needs your joy, so go for it.